Hello, everyone. Today, we'd be discussing how to score a 6 on 6 on a descriptive question that we get in paper 3. I've divided today's revision lesson into 4 parts. The first part, we discuss the generic marking scheme for a 6-mark descriptive question. Number 2, we discuss the specific marking scheme for a 6-mark descriptive question. And while doing so, we'd be revising the topic psychological explanations of obsessive compulsive disorder. Number 3, we discuss the CAIE published answer that has scored 6 on 6. That would, of course, give us a better understanding as to what the CIE is looking for to give or to score or to mark an answer 6 on 6. Number 4, we'd be discussing how and what all should we do to train ourselves to be able to score or to be able to write an answer that helps us score in the top level. Without any further ado, let's begin. If we have a look at the generic marking scheme, to begin with, if we have a look at the generic marking scheme or the general marking scheme that the CI uses to help students or to grade students. Now, as we clearly see, these questions, they are graded on the basis of different levels. We see 3 different levels over here. Level 3, the top level, level 2, level 1, and of course, we have level 0. Let's not count that for now. So for the first or the top level, where a student gets 5 to 6 marks, let's have a look at what the requirements from the CI are like. Number 1, remember this question asks you to describe. So the question asks you to describe, and what this shows is the questions that you would be using. I mean, if you're attempting this question for clinical psychology, you'd be attempting question number 4, and so is the case for the questions on consumer psychology, organizational psychology, or health psychology. So because we'd be using a question from obsessive compulsive disorder, I'd just highlight 4 over here. Now, to begin with, if we have a closer look, the Cambridge Examination Board expects us to clearly address the requirements of the question. So, clearly addressing the requirements of the question, number 1, what is expected of us or from us is clarity, right? So, this must cover both theories, concepts, if 2 are required. So, if there's a theory that has been asked for, you describe that in a clear manner. If there's a concept, explain that, or rather say, sorry, describe that in a clear manner. If they're both required, do so. Number 2, the description should be accurate and at the same time should be detailed. Accurate, by accurate we mean there is no room for any mistakes here. Number 3, the use of psychological terminology is accurate and appropriate. So whatever the psychological terminologies are that you are using, they should be accurate, and that at the same time they should be appropriate. Appropriate as in they should fit into according to the requirements of the question. Number 4, demonstrates excellent understanding of the material. So it is your job, it is expected from you to demonstrate excellent understanding of the material that you are you're writing. So if we mark these, if we number these, let's just make this 1, this 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, why is it that I've numbered this? I've numbered this so that it gets easier for us. As a student, if you have this in your mind, that if you want to score a 6 on 6, there is clarity required. You're expected to cover both theories and concepts if the question demands so. Number 3, accuracy. Number 4, detail. Number 5, appropriate material in the sense that it should cater to the requirement of the question. And number 6, demonstrate excellent understanding of the material, right? So your answer needs to stand out. It's important that we understand that if we are expecting to be scoring full marks, our answer should stand out, and our answer should be better than level 2 answers, level 1 answers, and a level 1 answer. Now, I'd like to assume you've all understood this. Let's move on and discuss the specific question that I wanted to discuss today. Now, while discussing this particular question, I would also try to revise the explanations, the psychological explanations of OCD. Now, this particular question is question number 4, and this has been picked up from the specimen paper from that could be used for papers from 2024 onwards. This is paper 3. This happens to be question number 4. Having a look at the question reads, describe the, I just zoom in. So the question reads, describe the psychological explanations of obsessive compulsive disorder. And the examiner has been nice enough to mention that he or she expects us to cater to the cognitive, the behavioral, and the psychodynamic part, all of it, right? So, all in all, you are expected to describe the psychological explanations for OCD, which again is the cognitive explanation, the behavioral explanation, as well as the psychodynamic explanation. Now, use table A, that is AO1 knowledge and understanding, to mark candidate response to this question. Now, what table are they talking about? They're talking about the table that we just discussed a minute ago, right? Now, this is very clearly the demand of the question, right? Now, to begin with, if we speak about cognitive and behavioral explanation, cognitive explanation, as you all should be aware by now, according to the cognitive explanation, individuals develop mental illnesses because of their faulty mental process, because of irrational, illogical thoughts, right? Now, just think, we're talking about obsessive compulsive disorders. We're talking about the explanations for obsessive compulsive disorders. And being a little more specific, we're talking about the psychological explanations for obsessive compulsive disorders, right? So, according to the cognitive explanation over here, individuals develop obsessions because of their faulty mental process, because of their irrational, illogical, maladaptive thought process. So, getting into this explanation is linked to obsessive thinking. Here you go. These thoughts lead to increased levels of stress and anxiety for the person. The reasoning behind the thoughts is faulty. Example, the toilet is covered in harmful germs that could kill. Stressful situations can make these thoughts even worse. Now, your basic knowledge on the cognitive explanation and on OCD could help you cover this entire part. What is OCD to begin with? Let me take this opportunity to help you revise this real quick. Your obsessions are your reoccurring, your persistent, your dreadful, demeaning, devastating thoughts, right? Those devastating, those persistent, intrusive thoughts, right? Focus on the word persistent. So these persistent thoughts, they keep on bothering you to the point that you start experiencing anxiety, you start feeling anxious. And the O part over here has to do with obsessions, and your obsessions have to do with your thoughts. I'd like to assume you all are aware of this, but I just took this opportunity to help you revise this. Whereas your compulsions, when we talk about compulsions, compulsions are those acts, the acts that you're involved into to be able to neutralize those obsessive thoughts, right? So, this in itself, when I talk about obsessions, your obsessions are your thoughts, your cognitions are your thoughts. So, we're talking about your thinking process, we're talking about your thought process. These thoughts lead to increased levels of stress and anxiety for the person. The reasoning behind the thought is faulty, right? Example, the toilet is covered in harmful germs that could kill. Stressful situations can make these thoughts even worse. Now, taking this a little further, moving on towards the behavioral explanation to this. As we speak about the behavioral explanation here, according to the behavioral explanation, individuals develop abnormalities because of the environment, because of their prior experiences. Individuals learn maladaptive behavior. And of course, to be able to treat them, you have to unlearn them. But let's not just go there. The behavioral explanation, according to the behavioral explanation, these thoughts lead to compulsive behavior, which reduce the obsessional thoughts for a time and act as the negative reinforcer of the behavior, as something that is unpleasant is removed. So, again, we spoke about your cognitions, your thoughts, and your behavior is your act. When you act in a manner that helps you reduce those obsessional thoughts, reduce them for a very short period of time, but nonetheless, you are able to remove an unpleasant experience. I mean, of course, no one wants to feel anxious, and those obsessional thoughts that you were experiencing, you're trying to remove them by acting in a particular manner. Taking this a little further, moving on towards the psychodynamic explanations. The psychodynamic explanation, as you all would be aware, they were initiated by Sigmund Freud. And according to Freud, like I typically keep on saying, if you know what personality structures are, like the id, ego, and superego, if you know what the psychosexual stages of development, that is the oral stage, anal stage, phallic stage, latency stage, and genital stage is, and if you're aware of what defense mechanisms are, you can easily score well for any question that you get on the psychodynamic explanation. So, according to the psychodynamic explanation, this considers OCD developing during the anal stage, OCD developing during the anal stage of the psychosexual stage of development. There may have been difficulties between the child and the parent at this stage when the child defecated or urinated. Children may become either anally expulsive or anally retentive, and the individual may become fixated at this stage. Compulsive cleaning or other rituals may help to soothe the early childhood trauma. Now, this is a defense mechanism that we're talking about. Defense mechanism. This again is referring to the psychosexual stages of development. Now, taking this ahead, this could also be the id and the superego in conflict with each other. The obsessive cleaning could act as an eco defense mechanism to deal with this conflict. Remember, these are the personality structures. They are your personality structures. Remember when I had said just a minute ago, if you have understood personality structures, if you've understood psychosexual stages of development, if you've understood what defense mechanisms are like, there's nothing that could hold you back from scoring well in any sort of question that you get on the psychodynamic approach or the psychodynamic model. So this was the specific marking scheme that the examiner expects us to be following, or to writing an answer alongside these lines that would help us score full marks. Now, there's a tiny little note that I would want to make sure that you all know and understand. So award up to 4 marks, where the respondent has described only part of the question, even if the response otherwise meets the criteria of level 3. So even if you have met the criteria for a level 3 answer, if you're missing on any part from this, you at max you'd be able to score 4. See, I don't make these rules, nor do you. So the people who make these rules, it's pretty important that we understand how our papers are set, how our papers are checked. The sooner we understand, the sooner we accept and adapt to them, the easier it gets for us to start with our preparation and to be able to prepare for an answer that could help us score full marks. Now, taking this ahead, let's quickly have a look at this answer that has scored a 6 on 6, and this answer in itself has been published by the Cambridge by the CAIE. So this very clearly shows this is a specimen answer where the student has scored full marks. Now, to begin with, the cognitive explanation. Okay, now a typical question students ask at this point is, sir, do we need to write an introduction? I mean, you tell me, do you see an introduction over here? If you do not see an introduction over here and the student has still scored full, you might as well do that too. Because remember, this is a 6-mark question. And for a 6-mark question, you do not get anything more than 9 minutes. So the max time you get is 9 minutes, right? Now, for this particular question, I don't think the reading the question part should take a lot of time, because I mean, we all should know that there's a descriptive question. There are actually 2 descriptive questions from the 2 respective components that you've studied for. In our case, we would be covering clinical psychology and health psychology. So we're aware, right? We're aware and we should be expecting this question. This has to be there. One, we should know that there would be a descriptive question. So it shouldn't really take us a lot of time to think as to what and how to write our answer, because I would expect this from you. I would expect everyone to to go sit for the examinations with the complete preparation. So yeah, let's take this a little further. The point being, we don't see an introduction here, right? So the cognitive explanation, here you go. The cognitive explanation of OCD is that patient is experiencing intrusive thoughts that are very distressing, right? So you have given the examiner an idea that you know what is causing OCD. Remember, intrusive, persistent thoughts which are causing distress. Understand this, right? Taking it ahead, now, you're further elaborating this when you write, an example of this is that they will become severely ill if they touch any surfaces. This is just a thought. This is just a thought, remember, right? So the patient believes that the thought is true. The patient believes that the thought is true, and this is what is making it a cognitive explanation to begin with. The patient believes that the thought is true and will obsess over it. The more the patient pays attention to these intrusive thoughts, the more likely it is that they will recur as the mind believes these thoughts are important. So, reoccurrence that I had spoken about too earlier. Moving on. This is connected because remember from OCD, this is your cognitive explanation is the O part and the behavioral explanation is the C part, right? And D is disorder. O is obsessive, C is compulsive, D is disorder. We're all aware. Now, taking this a little further, this is connected to the behavioral explanation as the patient will act on these intrusive thoughts. Acting. This act is your compulsion, right? So this reflects compulsion. This reflects thoughts. It's written over there as well. This is connected to the behavioral explanation as the patient will act on their intrusive thoughts. Again, a further development to this. See over here in the first paragraph, you saw development and you see that development in the second paragraph over here as well. I'm talking about this part and this part here, right? Now, in the example above, I'll just choose another color. So in the example above, they will avoid situations where they have to touch surfaces and also clean themselves extensively after touching anything. This behavior helps them to feel less anxious and act as a negative reinforcer for the behavior. So it is repeated over and over again and becomes compulsive. The worry about becoming ill is removed due to avoiding surfaces, so it reinforces the avoidance of surfaces in the future. So the first paragraph you wrote down about through the about the cognitive explanation. The second paragraph you wrote down about the behavioral explanation here. Taking this further, finally, there is the psychodynamic explanation, which suggests OCD can start at the anal stage of development. It is suggested that someone can become stuck at this stage, stuck or fixated, and engages in compulsive behavior later in life in order to resolve the conflict that did not get resolved during the anal stage. So, again, a defense mechanism being used. The child may have been taught that defecating is unhygienic, and the superego demands that the patient later in life engage in compulsive cleaning in order to satisfy the needs of the superego. Now, this is when a student has scored a 6 on 6. Now, I just want to question you all. Do you want to score a 6 on 6? I'm sure everyone would say yes to this. Now, the next question is, what do you think you have done so far to ensure that you're scoring a 6 on 6? Have you practiced? Question yourself. If you haven't, start practicing. Number one. Number two, remember when we were discussing the generic marking scheme, the examiner demanded detail, right? I'm not saying this because I feel like saying it. I'm saying this because I showed it to you. It's a published document by the Cambridge. The CAIE demands detail, right? Now, if they're demanding detail, we do not have an option of not we do not have an option of not providing detail, right? Now, there are many students who would end up asking, oh, sir, is half a page enough? Is one page enough? Is two pages enough? Now that about, I mean, I cannot measure, or I don't think using pages as a parameter to gauge how much you should write or what actually count for a detail is the best way to go about with this. Because remember, our writing differs. I mean, my writing would be different from your writing. Your writing font size would be different from a third person's writing size, right? So let's use another parameter way. Let's try to count the words. Now, over here in this particular answer, the student has written 244 words. Yes, I've counted them. They're 244 words. Now, the question that rises over here is, will you be able to write down somewhere close to this? If not, we should either practice or we should learn to manage our expectations. As blunt as it sounds, either you practice, I mean, we can all do better. If you're able to write 150 words in 8 minutes, I'm letting go of the ninth minute that we do get in our CIs, but I want to keep that minute aside. I mean, just trying to be safe here. But are you able to write 244 words? Are you able to write, let's just say, 220 plus words? If yes, well and good. If not, let's practice. Let's put our pen to paper. And guess what? If you're practicing it here, this would help you learn your syllabus content, right? I'm not asking you to close your books and test yourself. Let the CI do the testing part. For you, for now, you can just open up your book and start writing descriptive answers. That's the best way you could actually prepare for knowledge and understanding, the A1 part, right? Now, 244 words is what the examiner has provided himself or herself, where the examiner has awarded this question full marks, a level 3 marks, that is 6 out of 6 marks. Having a quick look at the examiner comments to this, the 6-mark questions are marked using a level-based marking scheme. We've just spoken about that a little while ago. Number 2, this response achieves in the top level as it addresses the requirements of the AO1 question with accurate and detailed description of the cognitive, behavioral, and psychodynamic explanations of obsessive compulsive disorder. 1, accuracy. 2, detail. Moving on. The description of the cognitive explanation of OCD has a very good focus on the cognitive feature of the disorder by stating that the patient experiences intrusive thoughts. Now, see, pick on keywords, right? Stating that the patient experiences intrusive thoughts. I'll just show you something that, do you see this? Where they remind psychological terminology being used in an appropriate manner, psychological terminology. Now, I had highlighted this in green earlier so that I could explain, so that I could help you, so that I could show it to you later. So yeah, taking this ahead, the description of the cognitive explanation of OCD has a very good focus on the cognitive features of the disorder by stating that the patient experiences intrusive thoughts. The description provides some detail through an example and clearly explains why the intrusive thoughts develop into OCD by stating that the patient believes that the thought is true, and also that the more the patient pays attention to these intrusive thoughts, the more likely it is that they will reoccur. This shows the candidate understands that it is not just intrusive thoughts that cause OCD, but it is the paying attention to and worrying about these thoughts that can lead to disorder. Moving on, the description of the behavioral explanation of OCD is also clear. This is good use of psychological terminology by describing negative reinforcement and how acting on intrusive thoughts can become compulsive. Again, an example of psychological terminology, negative reinforcement. Over here, it was intrusive thoughts. I'm talking about this and this here. Moving on, it is useful for this candidate to continue with their example from the cognitive explanation when describing the behavioral explanation to highlight the difference between these explanations. The candidate shows an excellent understanding that the behavioral explanation of OCD has a focus on the behavior of the patient and how obsessive behavior leads to a reduction in anxiety and therefore is repeated. Now, the final part, let's have a look at the final part here. The final description given in the response for the psychodynamic explanation is very brief, but it is clear. See, there's a possibility that you do better in one part of the explanation and not be able to do as good in another. But remember, if you are catering to the requirements of a top level answer, there's nothing that would hold you back from scoring full marks. Excellent use is made of appropriate terminology, which helps this candidate to show their understanding of this explanation and how it applies to OCD. To improve, this candidate could have explained how the cleaning behavior is an ego defense mechanism. So here you go. Psychological terminology is being used over here. All in all, the answer shows very good knowledge and understanding of the three explanation and has fulfilled elements laid out in the marking scheme. So as long as you are fulfilling the elements that are laid out in the generic marking scheme, there's nothing that would hold you back from scoring full. Now, this is another response. You might as well want to pause your this video over here and give this a read. This would help you understand why the student has scored a 3 out of 6 and not a 6 out of 6. These are the examiner comments to this, just in case if you want to give this a read as well. Now, in our revision lesson today, we, like I had initially mentioned, would initially speak about the generic marking scheme for a 6-mark question. I'd consider that done. Number 2, the specific marking scheme for a 6-mark descriptive question on psychological explanations of OCD, done with that as well. We just had a look at the CI published answer that has scored 6 on 6 full marks too. Now, how do we train ourselves to write a level 3 top level answer? Let's spend a minute discussing this as well. Number 1, remember your papers are set according to assessment objectives. Some of you might have an idea about what assessment objectives are, others might not. It's pretty important that we understand that our papers are set according to assessment objectives. I mean, you don't have to do anything, just type A-level psychology syllabus for 2025, 2026, syllabus code 9, syllabus code 9990. You'd come across the syllabus. Having a look at the syllabus, you'd understand what am I talking about. So there are 3 assessment objectives: AO1, AO2, and AO3 that are used when setting papers and while marking papers. AO1 is knowledge and understanding, right? So this question very clearly demands knowledge and understanding, and it is written over here. Just have a look at this. It's written over here very clearly, right? Taking this ahead, because this question is demanding knowledge and understanding, you need to know your content well, right? You can only answer this question if you know your content well. How do we score full marks? To begin with, open up your book or whatever, or from wherever, whatever content you use for your preparation, open that and start writing start writing answers to descriptive questions. And while you're doing so, time yourself. Timing plays a very, very crucial role. There's a possibility that if you know your content really well, and if you are actually, I mean, at times what happens is if you're reading a question in the examination, you actually feel super happy because you just realized that you've almost hit the jackpot, and you have you see a question in front of you that you had prepared for a day before. Very good. But do you realize there are chances of you getting carried away? Instead of spending 9 minutes, what if you end up spending 12, 13, 14 minutes? You do realize right after this question, there's another evaluative question too. So you don't want to spend extra time. No one's asking you to carry a stopwatch with you, but remember, time plays a very crucial role. And I mean, if we see, we all wish scoring full marks. The question is, what have we done to ensure that we're scoring full marks? Wishing is one thing, working towards full marks is another. I'd like to remind you all, I mean, if you have a look at the grade thresholds, they're low, they're super low. Why is that? That's because majority of the students, what I've seen is they do not understand, they don't think it is important to understand how to attempt the paper or how to sit for the paper. By just reading content from the book or by just learning content from the book is not enough. I'm not saying you're not supposed to read. I'm not saying you're not supposed to learn. Do so, but then train yourself. You know, when you're sitting for the paper, it's also very important that you stay in your right state of mind. Because for a 60-mark paper for which you get 90 minutes, those 90 minutes, I mean, there's a possibility that if you get 120 minutes instead of 90 minutes, you might be able to score super, super well. But then again, would you get extra time? No, you wouldn't. If you wouldn't, then you better focus on time management. Time management plays a very crucial role. One. Number two, do not allow any question, or rather say anything at all, to distract you while you're attempting your examination, while you're sitting for your paper, because the possibility, or rather say just the thought that I will not be able to answer a particular question might end up resulting in you messing up other questions, which you don't want, I don't want either, right? So how do you train yourselves? Write answers, put your pen to paper, right? Are you able to write 220 plus words? If not, let's practice, right? Because if we want to score full, we need to put in efforts that increase our chances, if not ensure that we're scoring full. So yeah, I could go on and on and on, but let's check this part as well. And I hope today's revision lesson has been helpful. Thank you.